All right, finna go ahead and get it started. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Life of Champ podcast. For today's episode 210, we're going to be discussing the masculinity and femininity. Now, this is a topic that I have discussed probably about, I want to say, maybe 4 or 5 times on this podcast. So if you want to see similar type of content to this, I would recommend go watching the previous podcast. I had did one with my girlfriend, and I have done a few by myself as well when I was a little younger, but I wanted to go ahead and do it again. So today we're going to be starting a series. This is the first ever series that I've ever done, and I'm looking forward to it. It is going to be on dating and attraction. This is going to be one where hopefully you guys can give some contributions. So if there's any questions or any specific topics that you feel like I need to go ahead and discuss, that you think that potentially I might have an insight on, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'm going to be doing 10 episodes, so it'll be within the next 10 episodes that I'm going to be developing this series. So you have 10 chances to go ahead and give me some ideas for me to talk about. So for today's episode, you must start with the foundation, right? Within anything, this is going to be the foundation of everything. This is the masculine and the feminine, whether you're a woman and a man, whether you're a woman and a woman, whether you're a man and a man, whether you're whatever, right? Whatever, okay? So this is going to be the foundation of attraction. When it comes down to dating and attraction, you first need to start with the basics. This is what I would deem the basics, and I feel like a lot of people still they misconstrue this topic, and then they wonder why they run into other problems. And for the most part, it's going to come down to this foundation. It's going to come down to this foundation as a foundational misunderstanding of the way that things work within intersexual dynamics. So this is going to be the masculine and the feminine, right? One thing I want to say before I actually get into it, dating and attraction, this specifically when it comes to, deep diving into any of these 10 topics that I'll be talking about, were one of the first things that I mastered within my self-improvement journey. And it was something that I was truly fascinated by, and it was something that I had dove really deep into when it comes to educating myself, wanting to go ahead and seek out experience, as well as obviously having my own field experience as well, which is had led me to a girlfriend, a good high quality woman, which most men are looking for. So therefore, if there's anybody that's going to be, I would say, properly equipped to go ahead and handle these topics, it's definitely going to be me, right? So everybody wants a woman. Everybody wants to go through a few different experiences. Everybody wants to have a successful dating experience and obviously find a woman, right? The only way that you're going to be able to do that is by at least trying to hear me out. So that is what I'll get into. So I feel like when it comes to explaining these things, they don't necessarily have to be gendered. I'm going to time and time again gender them because I do believe that it works better that way. So if you get offended by that, I'm sorry to tell you that most men are masculine and most women are feminine. That's not something that is particularly mind blowing, but nonetheless it needs to be said. But I'll try my best to separate gender from the masculine and feminine. So we'll get into it. So the masculine, I'm going to first define what masculine and feminine are for the people that do not know, or you need a little bit of better insight, or if you want to see exactly the way in which I think when it comes to these two things. So I'm going to give you a few different ways to describe them, a few different tendencies of behavior that I will go ahead and define them with. So the masculine, this is going to look like a leader. This is going to look like a leader. This is going to look like being decisive, being strong, being competent in many areas, and also being career oriented. These are definitely more masculine tendencies, right? For the feminine, this is going to be wants to be led, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, kind of going with the flow type behavior, a little bit more soft spoken, a little bit more caring, nurturing. They tend to be a little bit more emotional, a little bit more affectionate, and a little bit more empathetic for sure. And they have a tendency to be family focused, and focused on marriage over a career. And they're also okay with being vulnerable. And then with the last one, within all of this, which sums up all of what I've already mentioned, they are at the core submissive. Whether you want to hear that or not, whether you get offended by that or not, I don't really care. This is just my own pure observations of the world. Feminine is usually going to submit to the masculine, right? That's what it comes down to. So, getting into it, obviously they have their own different values and different interests, right? This is something that is natural. They naturally have things that they're drawn to, and they have they naturally have certain values that they value over other things. So I can give you one example, right? The masculine is going to tend to value respect over everything. Of course, the feminine still wants to be respected, but the ma- but the masculine is going to have respect at the top of their value hierarchy, right? And another one with the masculine, they're probably going to want loyalty on top of their value hierarchy as well. For the feminine, it's going to be their value hierarchy is going to be, how do I want to describe it? I think I would say at the top of their value hierarchy, it's going to look like interdependence. If it's if the feminine is properly calibrated, it should be interdependence. It shouldn't be particularly independence, right? There's this lie that has gone around in society that women or which is supposed to be the feminine needs to be independent, right? That's not how this life works. Humans are inherently not um, independent creatures. We thrive better when we are with other people, whether it's friends, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's with family. So they're going to be more interdependent focused, and that value is going to pretty much be above everything for the most part. So like I mentioned, they obviously have different values and different interests. Just to give you a little bit more of an insight of what that looks like, the masculine is going to like things like competition and building things, right? They're more focused. The masculine is going to focus a little bit more on being interested in things rather than people, and the feminine is going to be the opposite, right? They're going to be a little bit more people oriented, and they're going to be drawn to things like children. They care more about relationships and seeking marriage, right? Which is, like I said, is an interdependent quality in itself. So that is some of their different interests and different values that they have. And with that being said, the reason why I made this so prevalent and I wanted to do the absolute first thing when it comes to the dating and attraction series is because there's this concept that I learned a while ago, and this is a concept that even if I tried to defy from this, it always came back and always worked if I did consciously apply it. Whether it was consciously or unconsciously, if I applied it or if I started to observe it, it was something that has worked out good for me and worked out good for observably what I've seen for other people as well. This is going to look like this term called polarization. If you've never heard of polarization, I'll go ahead and tell you what that is, right? It is the need for the masculine and the feminine. It is the yin to the yang. I'll give you another example. The masculine is typically going to be like a cup, and the feminine is going to be more like the water in the cup, right? Just to give you an example, right? It's almost like you need a positive and you need a negative charge. So what it is, order and chaos. They're two, they're two opposites, right? But opposites attract, right? So you need both of these things. If you fail to have both of these things start to go downhill. Things will not work as efficient and as effectively as they can. So you need that polarization. So for example, if you're a man and you're dating a woman, right? The man being the feminine, or the man being the masculine, the woman being the feminine, right? Let's just say the man starts to slack off on the things that make him masculine. So let's just say he stops going to the gym. Let's just say he stops pursuing his purpose or doing his work, and he decides to act like a little child and plays more video games and does. Let's just say, not he's not taking everybody into account. Let's just say that, right? The woman is going to see, oh, he's acting more feminine, and then they're automatically, because this is how the feminine and masculine work. If one starts to become different, the other one has to become different. You can't they can sometimes stay the same, but more often than not, if you're the feminine and you see the masculine slacking and falling into the feminine, you're going to have a tendency to want to be in the masculine in order to balance things out. Whether it's consciously or unconsciously, you'll see it start to play out. You'll see a woman try to take more. In the example that I used, you see the women try to take more of an initiative on certain things when they see their man not being as decisive or being as keen to be a leader, right? So you'll see them start to take up roles because somebody needs to do it, and if the person that's supposed to be doing it, the masculine, not doing it, then they'll have the tendency to want to go ahead and do it because that role still needs to be filled, right? Or let's just say, for example, you have the man and the woman as well, right? The man being the masculine, the woman being the feminine. Let's just say the woman starts to become a little bit more masculine. She wants to be a little bit more decisive. she wants to kind of lead the interaction, right? And some people might be thinking, oh, that's okay. We can let the woman lead for whenever she wants, or she's independent, she's strong, whatever it is, right? But here's the thing: if you have two masculines, the masculine likes to compete. And if you have one that is naturally drawn to being masculine and one who is not naturally drawn to be masculine, right? The naturally drawn one obviously being the man, and the one that's not naturally drawn to being masculine being the woman, just know the man is going to want to compete. So that's going to lead into more arguments. That's going to lead into let's just say areas of conflict, power struggle. Let's just say that it's going to look like who's going to lead. The man's obviously going to want to lead in this example, and the woman's, let's just say, she wants to lead as well. Somebody has to lead, and one person has to lead. That's this entire dynamic. Essentially, in order to have a sufficient relationship, one person is going to have to be the lead, and one person is going to have to be the follower. And that doesn't necessarily make one better than the other. They are they are they are two parts to a whole. They are the yin and the yang, like I'd mentioned. And if you fail to have both of these things, or if one becomes the other, like I mentioned, there's going to be natural problems that occur. And I gave you that example of, let's just say, the woman being stepping into the masculine frame, and the man obviously already maintaining his masculine frame. Is going to look like a lot of arguments, right? So this is why the polarization idea is so key, that you need to have both the masculine and the feminine. You can't have two of the same, and you can't have them either be neutral as well. Being neutral is as close to being friends as you can possibly be, right? That's neutral. Neutral is friends, whether you're together or whether you're not together. If you guys are neutral, you guys, and I've heard people say this. They're like, oh, well, you know what? We switch off sometimes. The most intimate and the most attractive and the most well bonded people are going to have this masculine and feminine. They're going to have it. They're not going to be the same. That doesn't even make any sense. They're not going to be the same. That is how you lose attraction over time. When they see each other as equal, that's when you start to lose attraction for sure. I'm gonna read some of these comments. With magnets, the opposites always connect. The same sides will always push away from each other. It has to be a positive and a negative side, not positive and positive or negative and negative. Very, very well said, Jaden. It's the same with people. Feminine plus feminine, no one is leading. Masculine plus masculine, constantly fighting over who's the leader. Exactly. Whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And I want to keep reiterating that point, because there's a lot of these things and a lot of these concepts that you can kind of look over and you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter at all, right? But just know it does matter. You could say all day it doesn't matter, but just know that there's going to be problems that come up within relationships where this can be the main factor that it can all be attributed to as the root problem of why it is being caused, or why something's being sparked up. Let's just say the man's not being the man, or the man's not being masculine, or the woman's not being feminine, or like I said, if you want to switch up the roles or whatever, right? Let's just say the woman's being masculine and the man's being feminine, right? Whatever type of role you want to do. Let's just say the feminine man is all of a sudden becoming a little bit more masculine, and the masculine woman's becoming a little bit more feminine. And like I said, it needs to be, you need to have it defined. Whatever you are, okay? Man, woman, whatever it is, right? Whatever, all in between, right? You just need to define what role you want to play, and you must find your opposite. That's what it comes down to. You should not find somebody that's playing the same role or doing the same things that you're doing, or is the same exact way that you are, because that is what you call friends. That's it. That's what it is. There's no attraction. You need the polarization. You need the equal. You need the opposites, right? And I've seen and I've talked to people where they try to convince me otherwise, and then they never have a relationship that lasts, and you wonder why. It is a foundational there needs to be a foundation of understanding, and once I had found this to be a foundational understanding that I started to understand within my relationships, I understood why the woman was acting a certain way. So I'll give you an example. So within my first relationship, this is when I had first started learning about these concepts of the masculine and the feminine and polarization. That was when I was first introduced to this, and there were certain ways in which I was acting, and I was acting feminine, right? So I've been there and done that. I've been there and went through this experience, right? So let's just say I was acting a little bit more feminine, and because as a consequence of me acting, even though I was supposed to be the masculine, me acting a little bit more feminine, the feminine woman I was with was now tending to act more masculine. And here's the thing, I didn't like that. And she didn't like being like that. So therefore there was a conflict of interest. So now we were both upset because it was not working, because it just didn't make any sense. I wasn't doing my role and she didn't want to do the role she was doing. So therefore none of us were we none of us were we're intended to be in our reserved spot of being. And the let's just say the foundational agreement to our relationship did not make any sense if we were acting those certain ways. And on inverse, of course, if we were acting the ways in which we were needing to act, if I was acting masculine, if she was acting feminine, it worked out better. We got along very, very well. It was a good interaction if that was the outcome, if that was the let's just say the energy. If that was the energy, if I was being or doing in the masculine, and if she was acting or doing in the feminine, it was much better interaction. So if you don't necessarily believe exactly what I'm saying, and you have a relationship or you want to, interact with a woman or interact with a man, try to do the opposite. For me personally, I have seen women struggle with trying to be the masculine. I've seen it. They want a masculine man, they're masculine in their own nature, and they're looking for a masculine man. And then they wonder why no man likes them, because there's so many arguments that are going to be had. There's a power struggle. There's an unwillingness to be led. There's an unwillingness to be submissive. And whether you like that or not, whether you want to be that way or not, if that's what you want as a masculine, if you're a masculine woman, for the example, if you want a masculine man, you're going to have to put your guard down. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. The fundamental part of femininity is vulnerability, is the ability to be vulnerable. So that was one instance that I had, and I'll give you guys the example, right? So I had talked to a woman before, and she was probably one of the most masculine women that I've ever met. And me and her talked for a little bit, and I had asked her what is her biggest struggle with dating, and she said, "No man can really handle me." And I was like, if you ever hear a woman saying that, let's just say you're getting to know a woman, you're attracted to her, and she's attracted to you, whatever, right? And she says something like that, fellas, you need to run, because quite frankly, if you want to play the masculine, it's probably not going to work. And that was exactly the situation with me and her, and why it didn't work. She wanted to be more argumentative. She wanted to be pushy. She wanted to be. When a woman does this, to me personally, I'm gonna give you my own perspective, right? If I'm playing the masculine role, and if she wants me to play the masculine role, and she's also playing a masculine role, it is probably one of the most annoying experiences that I've ever experienced with women, by far, is when they try to play the same role. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And when you have this foundational understanding, if you decide to fall, I'm not gonna say if you decide to fall off. If you fall off, it's much easier to get back on because you know what you need to do, hopefully. And more importantly, if you're not falling off and they are just acting a way that they shouldn't act, that is conducive to the relationship, you can also say, hey, you're doing something wrong. There's something that's not right about you. There's something that could be better. And at the same time, if you're really playing the masculine role, it's going to be hard for her to step out of her feminine. Does it happen, and can it happen? 100%. But for the most part, if you're acting masculine, and let's just say your woman, for example, starts to act a little bit more masculine, the true masculine is going to check the other one and saying, hey, what are you doing? Hey, you need to stop that. And that should be good enough to hopefully put her back in the right energy, or hopefully put them back in the right energy, right? Because one needs to be the leader, one needs to be the one that checks, and the other one needs to be the one that gets checked if needed, right? And I'm going to discuss a little bit more things. So if you have any questions or comments, or if any of this You agree or disagree, feel free to leave it in the comments. I would love to hear a discourse. I've had plenty of conversations with people who disagreed with me, and like I had mentioned, go try it out in the world, because I have, and it didn't work, right? So put it to the test. I think they're trying to test you. They want the man to put them in their place, but they don't realize they're actually being extremely annoying, and no man wants to deal with that. And Jaden, you're exactly right, which it's perfectly accurate. They're trying to test you, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. It is what we call a shit test, which is going to be a future thing that I talk about on another podcast. If you want to know more about that, like I said, just stay tuned for sure. And that's what it is at the end of the day. I would say women move a little bit more unconscious, and the masculine should be moving a little bit more conscious. The feminine can get away with being a little bit more naive and a little bit more unconscious in their way of being, but the masculine on the other hand needs to be a lot more conscious. It needs to be more active rather than passive when it comes to their approach in life in general, or just it's just not going to work out good for you for sure. But I want to kind of mention this because I feel like if you're still watching and let's just say you're triggered a little bit, I do want to go ahead and let you know this. For the most part, society has a misperception of femininity. Some view it as weak when it is far from weak, right? To be able to relinquish the power to the right masculine, and that's something that I need to be very, very clear on, right? A woman can only be feminine in the presence of a good, healthy masculine. That is when they want to be feminine, right? Outside of that, they don't want to be feminine. So that's something that I need to mention because it is particularly key. If you're a woman and you want to be feminine, I do not recommend surrendering your power or being submissive to the wrong man. That is going to get you absolutely abused and taken advantage of, and I don't recommend that. Which is obviously going to come up to your ability to finding the correct partner for you, right? I keep saying men and women because it's one and the same, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. If you are a feminine, whether a man, a woman, whatever in between, right? If you want to surrender and be submissive, right? Whether you like to hear that word or not, if you want to be truly feminine, which you do, just know that there's going to be certain people that will take advantage and manipulate and let's just say control you. We'll say that. That can and will happen if you decide to relinquish your power and be submissive to the wrong person, right? But if you're willing to be submissive to the right person, that is going to be something that just happens over time. You're going to relinquish your power. You're going to trust in their leadership, and hopefully the partner that you choose is going to be a person that you trust leading you. If you're the feminine, if you already have trust issues with the partner that you've chosen the wrong partner, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Most people choose the wrong partner, then they blame, oh, well, I should just be independent. I should just be the leader myself. Why do I need to rely on a man? I should just be independent. All right, go ahead and try to act that out in the world. And one thing I want to mention as well, I'm kind of going back to the example that I mentioned earlier with the masculine woman that I dated. I want to mention this because this is so key. I had told her this. This was one of the things that I had told her, and it was one of the most profound things that once she understood, because I told her she didn't believe me. Once she understood and internalized this, she acted different from then on out, right? I told her this: if you want to act that way, fine. But just know the man that you want is going to be obviously a masculine man, because I talked to her, that's what she wants, right? Fine. Just know that they're going to have to be overly masculine to the point where they're damn near beating you to make you submit, or you're going to get a man that is merely a super feminine man. And obviously, most women don't want a feminine man. That's what it is at the end of the day. There's some women that do, right? There's some women that do, of course, but most women don't. Whether they know it or whether they don't know it, right? Most women don't. And with that being said, she obviously wants a masculine man. But just know the way in which you're acting. If you're a masculine woman and you want a masculine man, just know they're going to have to literally get to the point where they're overly masculine to get you to submit. Or, like I mentioned, you're going to find a little feminine boy that you can lead yourself, that you can tell, that you can say whatever, and they're going to act, right? That's just what it is. If you want that, that's one thing. If you don't want that, then you must change the way in which you act, and that is something. When I told her, she was like, she didn't believe me at first, but then when she started to truly, when that truly started to set in, her entire behavior started to change. It was crazy, actually. So yes, the femininity can only truly be embraced in the presence of a masculine man who's well structured. The feminine energy is very fragile, and obviously the masculine needs to be the protector, right? But a woman can't, a woman, the feminine can't protect itself. It needs the masculine in order to be protected. In order to be in the full feminine, it's going to need the presence of a good, true masculine. Um, and yeah, that is something that I definitely want to reiterate for sure, because it's like, if you're gonna be feminine, that's fine. Choose the right man to be feminine with. Because here's the thing: I'm not saying that you should be selectively feminine, but what I will say is you definitely should have a guard up until you understand when that guard is to be put down. But at the same time, if you have it up and it's up for too long, a lot of the masculine men will just, even if you're feminine, they'll just think that you're masculine. So it's a delicate balance, and it's tricky. It's tricky. I'll say that for sure. That entire thing it's an interesting perspective, um, an interesting topic of conversation. So in today's society, I would say the feminine and masculine are truly misunderstood and are being taught and shown incorrectly. So if you look at any TV show or any fucking movie that I've seen, the woman, or the what should be the feminine, I'm gonna say should be the feminine. They have this kind of like, oh yeah, I can do it. Oh, I'm the smartest in the relationship with being with a man. Which, if I'm being honest with you, I have rarely seen this act out in person, where I've seen the woman drastically smarter than the man, right? So that is kind of the societal perception. That is what's being taught, and that shows a very interesting side of what isn't really realistic in today's society. The man is the bumbling idiot who, can't make a decision and says, "Oh, whatever, honey, whatever you want." And here's the thing: if that is what we're being programmed with, there's going to be men who act that out. There's going to be women who act that out. There's going to be plenty of unhappy men because they thought, "Oh, this is what women want. Why can't I find a woman that wants that?" Because no woman wants a feminine man. I'm not gonna say no woman. Most women don't want a feminine man. And then women go out in the world saying, "Oh, well, society told me to be independent and um, to say I don't need a man and to have my guard up and to make my own money and this and all this stuff. Be independent, right? Be smart. Go to college. All these things, right?" And then when they actually apply that and be this independent woman, this masculine woman, then they can't find exactly what they want. They still want a masculine man for the most part. Then they can't find it, or maybe they don't do good with dating, even if they're attractive. If you act a certain way, if you're a masculine woman and you look great and you act a certain way around men, they still will not like you. They will still perceive you as ugly, even if you're really really attractive. And that's what it is at the end of the day. And one thing I want to mention as well, another societal, let's just say a societal pitfall that so many people fall into, is they're trying to make it seem that the masculine and the feminine are the same thing, or there's no such thing as a masculine or feminine. They're all the same. They're all equal, right? That's what society's trying to do. And quite frankly, you should never try to conflate the two. The two cannot and should not be done that way. And how do I want to mention this? They're not equal. They can be equal, right? And to be equal is to be the same. And we all know the masculine, the feminine, men and women, we are not the same. And here's the thing: to act out as if we're the same or to say we're the same is literally completely delusional. And if you disagree, that's fine. Like I said, go ahead and act it out and see if what you can act out is truly accurate to what the world is going to show you. We're inherently different, so we cannot be equal. So equal meaning the same thing. That is obviously a complete fallacy. It is a complete delusion. That's what it is at the end of the day. And here's the thing. I want to mention this as well. Let's just say you're watching this podcast and you disagree with what I have to say. If you're willing to suggest anything besides this, the masculine and feminine, which is typically the masculine man, feminine woman dynamic. If you're willing to suggest or live out anything that is contrary to what I've mentioned on today's episode, you're suggesting you're suggesting what I believe to be a ridiculous suggestion. Let me tell you why. You're suggesting that there's a better way of doing it, or you're choosing to live out a way that is less than ideal for both of the people that are involved. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Whether you hate me, love me, whether you agree or disagree with me, at the end of the day, if you're suggesting something outside of the mold of the traditional masculine and feminine, you're saying, "Oh, I know better than what has been." Go ahead and act it out. It's not going to work as good. I'm going to let you know that right now. Whether it's 2 men, 2 women, whatever it is, 2 whatevers, right? Just know it's not going to work out as good if there's not that polarization that I've mentioned. That is the draw of attraction, right? There's not, and there hasn't been up to this point, to my knowledge right now, there's not a better duo. This is why I said it's the greatest duo that ever existed. That's the title, the greatest duo, the greatest dynamic duo, right? Until I find something that is better than that, I'm going to say what I said, right? There's not a more ideal way of going about it. So if you choose to act out a way that's different than what I mentioned, just know that you're acting in a way that's hopefully rationalized by something's better, which is probably not, or you're choosing to go ahead and live a less than ideal way. You're living out a less than ideal. I'm not even going to say polarization because that wouldn't even be the right word. You're living a less than ideal dynamic, and both people are involved, and both people, they're living it out whether they know it or whether they don't know it, right? This is why. Let's just say if you're 2 masculines or this is why 2 masculines and 2 feminine cannot work, right? Even with gay and lesbian couples, they usually have a masculine and they usually have a feminine. That's typically the way that it goes. So let's just say, for example, you have one woman. I'm just gonna give you an example. I'm gonna give you what I see within the world. Whether, like I said, I don't care how you feel. I'm just gonna let you know. So let's just say you have 2 women and one's masculine and one's feminine. That's typically how it goes. So you have one woman who's in her natural state of femininity. She dressed and looks a certain way, and then you have one that doesn't exactly look like a typical woman. Hey, like I said, if you're getting pissed off of what I'm saying, that's fine. Let's just say a typical woman, right? You have a woman who's feminine who looks like a woman typically. What a typical woman would look like, right? I'm not gonna define that. I don't need to define that for you. And then you're going to have another one who doesn't look like a typical woman, right? This is going to, maybe she has a little bit shorter hair. Maybe she wears more of a masculine type of let's just say attire. Her attire is more masculine. Maybe it's more like maybe more shirts like this, and maybe more longer shorts, and maybe some like gym shorts and stuff like that, or whatever. You get what I'm saying, right? Usually, it's going to be, there's still that dynamic's still going to be, because they know that that's what works. If it does work at all, that's what's going to work, is the masculine and feminine. So same thing with 2 men. Typically, this is how it goes. If you're in a gay couple, if you have a gay couple, right? Usually one's going to be the one that leads, right? And one's going to be the one that submits. You have the one that's on the top and one that's on the bottom. That's what it is at the end of the day. So, with that being said, that dynamic still works. And like I said, if you have 2 masculines, they're going to argue. They're going to argue and they're going to fight and compete for dominance, which is more fights, whether it's fist fights, whether it's actual fights, or more arguments. That's what it's going to come down to, right? And this is one that I see, and I'll mention this because I think this is interesting, and you can find this study somewhere else. So I think it's relevant to bring it up, and I find it interesting. Maybe you guys will find it interesting. So there's a study that says that lesbian couples are the most likely to have domestic violence between them. I find that very, very interesting. So that dynamic, let's just say that dynamic gets, let's just say, messed up. The polarization isn't there. They're going to more than straight couples, more than gay couples, be more prone to domestic violence, fights, and things like that. Because, like I said, if you have a dynamic that's not working, whether this is two masculines, two feminines, two neutrals, it's not going to work. It literally just can't work. I don't even have to explain it much more than that. But if you and here's the thing, I'll give this as an example, right? If you have two feminines, if you have two masculines, like I mentioned, fights and arguments, right? If you have two feminines, nothing gets done, no one gets led, and no one knows what's for dinner. That's what it is at the end of the day. Whether you want to say that or not, whether you hate me for it or not. If you have two feminines, what are we having for dinner? No, nobody can make it. Nobody can make a decision. Nobody's decisive. I guess we ain't eating then. So what it is? Because here's the thing: we all know women don't know what they want to eat. They know what they don't want to eat, but they never know what they want to eat. When I say that, I mean the feminine. The feminine never knows where they want to eat. And if you have two of them, you might as well not eat at all because they're not going to be able to make a decision at the end of the day. So that's what it is. That's what it is. I'm going to read some of these comments, and hopefully you like what I'm saying. If you do, fantastic. I'm doing a series. The next 10 episodes on this podcast will be looking like this, talking about dating and attraction, one of my most favorite topics to talk about. All of these are going to be a part of my course that I'm creating. So if you have any interest on the course, feel free to leave it in the comments that you have interest, and I will reach out to you. Like I said, feel free to reach out if you have any questions regarding anything that I've mentioned, masculine, feminine, anything within the intersexual dynamics of the two. Feel free to leave it in the comments for sure. But I'm gonna read these comments and then I'll go ahead and end it off. Independent queen, quote unquote. Okay, sure. Never the same, but both are extremely important. Yes, they're not the same. They're both needed. It's a yin and yang. It's the analogy that I used, and I think this is a great analogy that I've heard before. It's the cup and the water. The woman being the water, and the masculine, or the masculine being the cup and the feminine being the water, right? The feminine's more go with the flow. It's going to be more moldable. The masculine is going to be the structure. It's going to be the cup, obviously, in this instance. So hopefully you can kind of understand that example, and if hopefully it makes sense to you. But you need both. You can't have two waters because then you just have a pile of water, and you can't have two cups because then you have just two cups. That's it. No one's drinking. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? And hopefully you can kind of understand that. Just because you dress like a guy doesn't mean you are. You are still as emotional as any other woman. Okay, that's just Jaden's take for sure. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But that could be the reason why, for what I mentioned, the lesbian couples, they have more instances of domestic violence as opposed to the gay couples and straight couples. I find that interesting. Like I said, you can find the study if you want. If you think I'm bullshitting, you could find it. It's somewhere out there. It's somewhere out there on the internet. But yes, this was episode 1 and episode 210 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about dating and attraction, and more importantly, the masculine and the feminine. This is one of my favorite topics. Dating and attraction was one of the first things that I was truly interested and drawn to when it comes to just in self-improvement in general. So that is what I'll be discussing these next 10 episodes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to leave it in the comments or the live comments. I'll end it off here in about a few seconds. But yes, I'm looking forward to this. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and if you couldn't tell already, I've already had like 4 or 5 episodes on masculine and feminine. It's one of the most interesting conversations to me because people still get it wrong. And then they live it out, and then they wonder why they're having certain problems, or their partners are having certain tendencies, or why they're running into the same type of issues, and usually it's going to come back down to a foundational misunderstanding, and this is exactly what it is. So hopefully this can give you a little bit more clarity and a little bit more of insight of what to look for, how to act, and hopefully give you some guidance, and hopefully give you some extra knowledge that you can kind of be more well equipped when approaching this world, because this world In this world, society is trying to convince you of otherwise, and until I see a better solution, until society provides me a better solution than what is the natural order, the masculine and the feminine, then I will not believe anything besides that for sure. But gay, straight, lesbian, whatever it is, what name whatever, man, whatever dynamic you want, it needs to be masculine and feminine at the end of the day. If it works best, it's going to be masculine and feminine. It's not going to be two neutrals. One needs to lead, one needs to follow, and one needs to be dominant, one needs to be submissive. Whether you want to hear that or not, that's what it is. I didn't make it like this. I'm merely an observer, just like you are. But here's the thing: if you observe something better than the structure that I've mentioned, the structure that has worked for so long, and the structure that is the natural order of the world, feel free to leave it in the comments. I would love to have a conversation with you if you believe something otherwise than that. You better have a strong argument, because if you don't, you're gonna get cooked. That's it. That's all I have to say for today's episode. Appreciate everyone for stopping by. The next episode is going to be on Thursday. I'll be doing another live stream on Monday or Tuesday, so look out for that for sure. If there's any content or any creators that I'm going to go and react to, I'll be doing that on Monday and Tuesday. Episode 2 of the Dating and Attraction series is going to be on Thursday, so tap in with that for sure. The topic, let me see if I can find it real quick. The topic is going to be, just to give you a little bit more of an insight, it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be choosing signals and a little bit more of attraction. So these are going to be a lot of the concepts that I've heard before and have actually seen play out. So look forward to that for sure. Y'all have a good rest of your night. Tap in with the next podcast on Thursday, man.